So I was scrolling through a few articles this morning, and the buzzwords are they're everywhere. Burnout, decision fatigue, anxiety optimization.
Right.
It feels like we're living in this unique moment in history where the human brain is just, completely redlining.
Oh, absolutely. We assume this is all a byproduct of the iPhone or the 24-hour news cycle or something.
Exactly. We think stress was invented sometime around the launch of social media.
It definitely feels that way.
Right. But today, we're going to completely dismantle that idea. We're doing a deep dive into a source that suggests our modern burnout isn't modern at all.
Okay.
We're looking at a transcript of a sermon delivered on a Sunday morning, January 12, 1862, to be exact. It's titled, A Cure for Care, and it was delivered by Charles Spurgeon.
And just to set the stage here, 1862 wasn't exactly a walk in the park.
Not at all.
The Industrial Revolution was in full swing, financial systems are getting incredibly complex, and London was this total pressure cooker of commerce and poverty.
So Spurgeon was looking out at a sea of faces that were just as stressed, just as anxious as anyone you'd see on the subway today.
Precisely. And his solution isn't what we would call self-care.
No, not at all. He doesn't tell them to take a holiday or, do some breathing exercises.
Yeah.
He proposes something that honestly sounds a bit radical to modern ears.
It is radical, and the whole mission of this deep dive is to unpack his argument, which is based on a text from 1 Peter. Humble yourselves, casting all your care upon him.
And the key insight right off the bat is how he links those two things.
Yes, we always want to jump straight to the casting care part, getting rid of the stress. But Spurgeon argues you can't even do that without the first part, humility.
He uses this really specific visual, doesn't he? Something about pyramid or stone steps.
He does. He asks us to visualize these massive stone steps of a monument. He says Scripture is structured like that. You cannot stand firmly on the upper step, casting your care, unless your feet are planted firmly on the step below it, which is humble yourselves.
That's a fascinating mechanical breakdown. So it implies that anxiety isn't just an emotion that happens to us. It's a byproduct of where we're standing.
Exactly. If you haven't humbled yourself, you physically cannot hand over the burden. You're trying to levitate. It just doesn't work.
So this leads him to do something very analytical. He sort of performs a diagnosis of our anxieties.
He does. He argues that before we can ask God to take our worries, we have to look at what those worries actually are. Because according to him, there are some anxieties we have no right to ask God to carry.
Okay, this is where the rubber meets the road. He's basically filtering our stress. He starts with covetousness.
Right. And in our culture, ambition and the drive for more are usually celebrated. Spurgeon just pumps the brakes. Hard.
He draws a hard line between daily bread and, excess.
A very hard line. He says if your anxiety comes from a hasty desire to get rich, to add house to house and field to field, you can't go to God and say, Lord, help me hoard this wealth.
It's like asking for divine intervention to help you win a lottery you don't even need.
Or asking God to help you manage a lifestyle that he never told you to pursue. Spurgeon argues this isn't an honest care. It's self-inflicted. You can't cast it on God because God didn't give it to you. You picked it up yourself.
And he applies this same logic to status, too. The ambition to be famous or eminent.
Yes. The desire to be looked up to. He uses this incredibly visceral language here. He says, asking God to help you secure fame is like emptying the filth of your house upon the altar.
Wow.
It's offensive. A humble person uses the image of a weaned child, doesn't stay up at night worrying about their personal brand or social standing.
That weaned child image is powerful. A child who is weaned isn't screaming for milk anymore, they're just content.
Yeah.
But then he moves to a category I think everyone struggles with. Imaginary fears.
The stuff that hasn't happened yet. The frivolities of our own creation.
Right.
These are the anxieties that exist only in our brains but somehow manage to vex the heart. He argues that if we were truly humble, if we truly accepted that God is in charge of the future, we wouldn't waste energy inventing catastrophes.
So a lot of our stress comes from wanting things we shouldn't want, or fearing things that aren't even real. But then Spurgeon pivots to his central and probably most controversial claim. He doesn't just call anxiety a weakness. He calls it a sin.
He does.
And I have to push back on this a little bit, because if you tell someone who's in the middle of a panic attack that they're sinning, that feels incredibly harsh.
It does. It sounds like kicking someone when they're down.
Is he really saying that feeling stressed makes you a bad person?
I think it's a crucial distinction. He isn't talking about the physiological response to stress or, the grief of a hard situation. He's talking about the intellectual posture of worry. the mindset.
The mindset.
He argues that chronic excessive anxiety is actually a form of arrogance.
Arrogance. That's the last word I would associate with worry. Worriers usually feel so small and helpless.
But think about what you're doing when you worry. You are effectively saying, I need to control this outcome because I don't trust how it's being handled. Spurgeon says it's an attempt to be wiser than God. It's snatching the helm from the pilot.
Okay, so it's about control. It's the backseat driver syndrome, but with the universe.
That's it, exactly. He quotes a text that's a direct rebuke. Art thou also one of the king's counsel?
Ouch.
Right. God didn't ask for your advice when he spun the planets into orbit. So why do you think he needs your consulting services for your Tuesday afternoon?
It's a demotion, but I guess a relieving one.
It is. But he warns that this arrogance of worry has a domino effect. It doesn't just stay in your head, it starts to rot your life. He calls it the grapes of Gomorrah.
So what does that look like?
Well, if you don't trust God to provide, you start taking matters into your own hands. He talks about business dishonesty. The tradesman who thinks, if I don't cheat a little, I won't make it. He uses the tricks of the trade because he doesn't trust God's hand to be enough.
So you start hustling in the wrong way because you're panicked.
Exactly. Or you start relying on people, broken cisterns, he calls them, sucking up to a mentor or a wealthy friend, thinking they are your source. It kills your independence, it hinders your prayers, and ultimately it just makes you miserable.
He says a man can be rich and miserable or poor and happy, and the variable is the burden.
Yes, and if you make your own misery, it lies at your own door. Plus, an anxious person is a useless person. You can't work well, you can't serve well, if your mind is fractured by worry.
To help us visualize this, Spurgeon uses these 3 brilliant analogies, and I want to spend some time on the porter. This one really stuck with me.
It's such a great bit of storytelling. So imagine a porter, a guy hired specifically to carry luggage. The master hires him to carry a specific trunk to a specific destination.
Okay.
The load is heavy, but it's proportioned to the porter's strength. He can handle it.
But then the porter does something stupid.
He does. He decides to strap a massive piece of his own furniture to his back, like a sofa or something, on top of the master's trunk, and he's stumbling down the road, groaning, about to collapse.
And the master sees this and, well, he doesn't offer to help carry the sofa.
No. The master says, "What are you doing? I hired you to carry my goods. You're not strong enough to carry mine and yours." The rebuke is just practical. Leave your own stuff alone.
It's such a clear picture of burnout. We have our actual duties, but then we strap on the furniture of our ego, our reputation, our 5-year plan, and when we blame the master for the weight.
And the master is saying, I didn't give you that sofa.
Then he shifts to the ambassador or the merchant. This feels very relevant.
Super relevant. The scenario is a king sending a merchant on a diplomatic mission. The merchant is hesitant. He says, "King, if I go do your business in a foreign land, my own business back home will go to ruin."
Which is a valid fear. If I'm doing this, who's doing that?
Of course. But the king makes a deal. He says, "You take care of my business and I will take care of yours." Spurgeon quotes the promise, "I will answer for it that you shall be nothing the loser."
A total transfer of responsibility.
And he backs this up with the story of Peter fishing. Jesus borrows Peter's boat to preach. That's Peter giving up his prime fishing time for Christ's business. Logically, Peter should have lost money that day.
But then comes the catch. Literally.
Literally. Jesus tells him to cast the net, and Peter catches more fish in 10 minutes than he would have in 10 weeks. The return on investment for trusting the king's business was exponential.
So if we accept the diagnosis and we accept the analogies, what is the actual cure? How do we apply this? Spurgeon gets very specific.
He starts with the most primal anxiety, daily bread, survival.
Which for 1862 Londoners wasn't a metaphor. It was literal.
Absolutely. But Spurgeon points to nature. He says, look at the birds. They don't sow, they don't reap, they don't have savings accounts, yet they're fed. Now, he isn't advocating for laziness.
No, he's very clear on that.
Very clear. He says we must work by the sweat of the brow, but we must avoid the sweat of the brain.
Sweat of the brow, not sweat of the brain. I love that distinction. Do the work, but don't let the anxiety of the outcome rot your mind.
That's the whole key. Then he moves to the credit system. And this is where the historical context is fascinating. Modern capitalism was accelerating. Businesses were running on debt and leverage.
So this isn't just a quaint agricultural sermon. He's talking about financial leverage.
He is. And for the honest business person who is struggling, he offers the two hands technique.
I like this. It's a very tactical mental model.
He says use the hand of prayer to tell God your wants and use the hand of faith to leave them there. Then he just drops this reality check, he says. Weeping all night won't keep your ship off the sandbar. Fretting won't make a thief honest.
It's the inefficiency of worry. It burns calories but builds nothing.
Nothing. Then he touches on parenting. And this is where that control aspect really hits home.
Oh, for sure.
Parenting is the ultimate loss of control. He talks about the mothers bringing their children to Jesus. The disciples, Peter specifically, try to block them. They think the master is too busy.
And the disciples here could be anything, right? Societal pressure, school admissions, bad influences.
Anything. But the mother pushes past Peter. She knows she can't save her child, but she can bring them to the source. The cure for parenting anxiety isn't being a perfect parent, but realizing you are just the vehicle to bring the child to God. You have to hand them over.
That's terrifying, but also freeing. And finally, he talks about religious work. But I think this applies to anyone in mission-driven work.
Totally. The anxiety of, is my work actually making a difference? He uses a metaphor about the Valley of Baca. He says it's the human's job to dig the wells. That's the labor. But it's God's job to fill them with rain.
You can't make it rain.
You can't. Your jurisdiction ends at the digging.
He also has a pretty bold take on criticism, on dealing with haters.
Yeah.
He basically says, ignore it.
Pretty much. He has this incredible line. The truth has ridden into Jerusalem on the back of its most despicable enemies.
Meaning God can use the bad guys as the donkey.
Exactly. Even the opposition is part of the plan. So why are you losing sleep over them?
Okay, we need to talk about the consequences. Because Spurgeon doesn't just say, if you worry, you'll be sad. He goes pretty dark here. He mentions the madhouse.
This is where we see his awareness of mental health, even in Victorian terms. He warns that carrying these cares leads to the poisoned cup, a euphemism for suicide, and fills up the lunatic asylums.
He predicts that as business competition gets sterner, mental instability will increase. That feels almost prophetic.
It really does. He saw the trajectory. He's arguing the human mind is not designed to carry the weight of God-sized problems. If you try, the machinery just breaks.
And there's a branding issue for Christianity too, right?
A huge one. He asks, if a Christian is walking around looking miserable with the winters of a century on their forehead, who is going to believe their religion is worth anything?
It's bad advertising.
Awful. If you claim to have a provider but you act like an orphan, the world sees the contradiction.
So we've got the diagnosis, the analogies, and the application. How does he close the deal? What is the inducement to actually let go?
He pivots to Providence. He starts big. Universal providence. God cares for ants and worms and spinning worlds. He names the stars. The logic is simple. If God can manage the astrophysics of the galaxy, he can probably handle your rent.
It's a scale argument.
But then he zooms right into particular providence. The text doesn't say God cares for the universe. It says he careth for you. Spurgeon emphasizes how personal this is. He ends with that image of Jesus walking on the water on top of the chaos saying, "It is I. Be not afraid."
It's not just a distant CEO, it's a present help.
Exactly. And that brings us right back to the pyramid. The cure isn't trying harder to stop worrying. The cure is humbling yourself enough to admit you aren't the captain of the ship.
So here's the provocative thought I want to leave everyone with. We usually view our stress as a badge of honor proof that we are working hard, that we care. But if Spurgeon is right, our anxiety is actually a form of pride. It's this subtle subconscious belief that if we don't hold the universe together, no one else will.
It's the ego saying, I am essential to the rotation of the earth.
Right. So the challenge is, can you humble yourself enough to resign from the job of general manager of the universe? Because apparently the position is already filled.
And the current management is doing just fine.
That's a good place to leave it. Thanks for diving in with us.
A pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.